Since Garou is a major protagonist in One Punch Man Season 3, I decided today to pit him against Jujutsu Kaisen's King of Curses, Ryumen Sukuna, alongside his cheated powerful Shikigami known as Mahoraga. These characters share many similarities, as Mahoraga and Garou can adapt to any threat, while Sukuna embodies the absolute fear that Garou aspires to become. In this video, we'll analyze their hacks, abilities, and physical stats to determine who truly is the strongest. Before that, make sure to slash the subscribe button and the notification bell for more of these interesting matchup videos. Thank you. In a world of heroes and monsters where the line between good and evil is often blurred, there exists one man who stands alone, rejecting both parties. Garou, a martial artist who is considered as the ultimate prodigy, possessing potential even greater than those who are called anomalies. He is considered and implied as the second character that is following the footsteps of breaking his limiter. But nonetheless, how strong is Garou? Now, in terms of strength, if we use a conservative estimate of Garou's strength, then he should still rank significantly above Genos' initial incineration cannon, which was capped at 16 kilotons of TNT. Throughout the story, it's consistently shown that Genos received multiple upgrades after that feat, and each one substantially increased his destructive power. This is evidenced by his fight with the Deep Sea King, as an earlier version of his cannon only weakened and downgraded him to a partially transformed state, while a later upgrade as seen in the audiobooks was capable of completely obliterating him. This certainly suggests that each upgrade represented at least a one-shot level of power increase over the last. Now, by the time Genos fought Garou, he had likely undergone at least 4 relevant upgrades, making his casual firepower easily city level if you multiply it by 4 one-shot tiers. Although Garou in fact did actively dodge these cannons, as they should be packing more than Genos' casual strikes, but he has never indicated that they would be fatal, and his body has never experienced that much firepower. However, considering that Garou was severely injured, poisoned, and fatigued to the point of not being able to walk just before the encounter, it's safe to say that he's only dodging them not to fall under an additional nerf. Now, to properly assess his capabilities, it's very important to distinguish between Garou's healthy state and his weakened condition from injury, fatigue, and poison. You see, Garou, before fighting the 8 Class A/B heroes, he did say that under normal circumstances, he would have been able to easily take care of them with no difficulties. He also after considers Genos a frightening opponent only in his current condition, which means, impressively enough, Garou scales to these levels of strength when he is heavily nerfed. This is actually substantiated by the fact that healthy Garou scales to Metal Bat, who was able to fight Carnage Kabuto without his fighting spirits in the audiobooks. This, paired with many other feats and interpretations, such as withstanding punishments from both Bang and Bomb and taking hits from Tank Top Master, suggests that specifically healthy human Garou should at least be mountain level in the strength department. Now, this is the time of the video where I say that this is a laughable level of strength of Garou, as from now on, specifically in Season 3, he started attaining greater levels of strength due to multiple near-death experiences. This is actually a part of the power system of the One Punch Man series, where he goes from struggling with 2 demons, granted he was still nerfed, to fighting against Overgrown Rover, withstanding his crazy blast, defying Giru, overcoming her ability, and withstanding even the Monster King. Giru stated that a considerable amount of force and effort is required to take him down. That, with the fact that the story implies he's already a dragon level monster, suggests he should be on the large island levels of durability and attack potency. One can argue that Garou didn't really win against any of these monsters, but the fact that he's able to withstand the strongest of the dragon level category indicates he should be at least within these levels of strength. Speed, on the other hand, is something I've talked about many times on this channel. And again, if you wanna be very conservative, you can bring the multiple massively hypersonic feats and cacks and say that Garou can at best only be 200 or 1000 times faster than sound, such as Death Gatling's shower, where Garou performed that when he was barely able to react or see. But then you can also still bring up the fact that Sanji and Max both have lightning speed attacks according to the databook, and a Yayan being able to parry Homeless Emperor's hits should lend him massively hypersonic plus levels of speed. Narratively speaking, these guys don't even hold a candle to human Garou, let alone his half-monster state. Which brings us to Genos dodging lasers that contains the properties of light way back in season 2. Some people say that lasers are commonly used in anime and manga and shouldn't be considered as light speed, but then Awakened Cockroach only mentioned the speed of light ultimately because he was nagging Genos to use lasers. But if one would still want to ignore these pieces of information, then you can simply bring up the fact that Garou was able to dodge multiple horns of the Monster King that Awakened Cockroach failed to even sense with his precog ability. All these informations function to convey that Garou should be within these light ranges of speed. Now, Garou's power isn't necessarily just about raw strength or speed, it's also defined by his supernatural resilience and his ability to adapt and evolve mid-combat. This without even the mention of his mastery over multiple martial arts techniques where some wouldn't even have the chance to see. He can actually copy techniques from first sight like he did with the Whirlwind Iron Cutting Fist, gain resistance to any type of attacks such as telekinesis and explosive power, and even gain the ability to regenerate from fatal attacks. All of these applications made Garou evolve to much higher stages that in my opinion shouldn't even be included in this video. And with all of this being said, can Garou overcome the king of all curses? The king of all curses, Ryumen Sukuna, has been considered as the strongest character in the entire verse after he finally defeated the Honored One, required the entire force of Jujutsu sorcery to even stand a chance against him, and literally used the bullshit solution to take him down. He's undoubtedly a character that made us all think he's impossible to stop. But nonetheless, how strong is the king of all curses? Now, being the strongest in the verse means almost any crazy feat performed would be something Sukuna scales above. Obviously, other than some exceptions like Yuki's Black Hole and Yuruzu's Sphere that should be applications only exclusive to their technique, which means he certainly scales above Oraume creating a giant ice structure and Ryu's Granite Blast that both were capped at 41 kilotons of TNT, which makes it town level. As a matter of fact, Sukuna should scale to Gojo, causing a 2.0 intensity earthquake that was capped at 164 kilotons of TNT, which makes it large town level. This actually rhymes perfectly with the fact that Jogo's maximum meteor being around the same level that Sukuna himself admitted he would have taken damage if it hit him. Some people resort to using the fan book or data book that states that Jogo's meteor would reduce an entire city to ashes, getting this to large island to country level of destructiveness due to vaporization. But this is not really how scaling works, as this statement is obviously hyperbolic since you've literally seen the attack performed in the manga and it's not like it didn't happen, and there was no such a thing as reducing the city to ashes. If the attack was destroyed before it made contact in the ground, then you can say it would have maybe vaporized the whole city, but since we've seen its effect on land, you can't really use that. This is actually a similar argument to the Sukuna reducing world to ashes back cover statement, as that is also supposed to be hyperbolic, since you've literally seen the entire manga and nothing from him specifically really indicates that level of power. Well, that would be a little disingenuous for me to say, as there is Yuki's Black Hole that should be able to destroy the whole planet. But people need to understand the structure of battle this manga provides. Sukuna isn't really feared and considered as a legend because he's physically much stronger than everybody else. I mean, he kinda is, but not to the point of the top tiers not being able to hurt him. But in fact, it's solely because of his proficiency, experience, and knowledge in cursed energy, cursed techniques, and the whole power system in general. The meme of Sukuna saying stuff like, "Ah, yes, my anti-technique I haven't used since the Heian era," originates from fans understanding that Sukuna would always most certainly prevail since he's that crafty when it comes to cursed techniques. This is perfectly shown in his battle against Yoruzu, as he prevailed even when she has an attack that could certainly kill him. That's why me, same as the majority of power scalers, don't believe that Sukuna scales to Yuki's Black Hole, but in fact we do understand that at a narrative standpoint, he will find a way to overcome it, which means Sukuna with an additional finger should be around city level of attack potency, durability, and we extend that to even destructive capabilities. Now, in terms of speed, if you wanna go by the author's intention and not consider any other feats or calcs, then the verse would sadly cap only at slightly above Mach 3 levels of speed. This stems from the fact that a top tier character such as Maki resorts to precognition to avoid the Mach 3 attack, and Chozo's piercing blood being hyped up as a speed of sound attack that a character like Oraume that later faces Hakari considers this as impressively fast. But the community actually defends the verse by showcasing different feats that portrays characters moving at much higher speeds, such as Hakari reacting to lightning, having enough time to slightly move, and Maki seemingly lifting her arms before she gets hit by Noe's lightning. Both of these have issues and problems, but people nowadays substantiates these with another questionable feat from Sukuna dodging electromagnetic waves. This should make him a lightspeed combatant. I've talked about all of these feats and why they shouldn't be accepted, but I'm not going to do that in this video and just roll with them for the sake of this matchup. Now, this is the section where we should talk about Sukuna's abilities, as that's where he is the most dangerous at. Most notable ones are his domain expansion, the Mahoraga summon, and the invisible word cutting slash. His domain expansion actually allows him to continuously and instantly hit his opponent with non-stopping slashes within an open space of 200 meters. And while this is happening, he can still physically fight, use his Mahoraga summon that can literally adapt to any phenomenon, and also use the world cutting slash. I gotta say, it's very ambiguous if the slash can actually negate durability, but will operate under the assumption that it actually does. And with all of this being said, can Sukuna overcome the hero hunter Garou? Now, if you tackle this matchup just looking at their stats, it's basically as clear as the sun that Garou just outclasses him in the speed and strength department. It's not even funny. Garou at this point is withstanding Rover's blast that should easily be capable of destroying what can hurt Sukuna himself, which is Jogo's meteor. Not only that, Garou can tank a hit from a trying suppressed Orochi for a fair amount of time, and Orochi at this point, while hiding his true powers, is still considered the strongest monster there is, which technically scales him above Koketsu's country level shockwave. So for Garou to withstand a portion of that power makes Sukuna's physical strength look completely ridiculous. This sadly doesn't change when it comes to speed, as Garou's light speed meta is much more strengthened to what the JJK verse has to offer. This really indicates that a close confrontation would be heavily disadvantageous to Sukuna, not only due to the massive gap of strength, but also the martial arts aspect that would be pressing for the king of curses. The water stream rock smashing fist is the best offensive and defensive technique and should work perfectly on humanoid opponents. But this is not a simple matter of strength and speed. I mean, for most matchups it is, but Sukuna is known for his abilities rather than his physicalities. Now let's say hypothetically Sukuna right off the bat activates his domain expansion, since he does understand how crazy dangerous Garou is. Can Garou survive his instantaneous cleaves and dismantles? To answer this question, we gotta bring Gojo to this equation. In chapter 225, Gojo was finally caught by Sukuna's domain expansion, and while he only survived due to his continuous usage of reverse curse energy, the initial slashes weren't strong enough to, let's say, decapitate or one-shot him immediately. This is actually very important, since Garou, as we discussed before, should be physically more durable than Gojo or Sukuna. But despite the huge gap of strength, and some people would even argue that Garou would be able to walk through his domain with no concern, one should admit that according to anime logic, anime characters, despite how strong they are usually allergic to swords, knives, or anything of sharp substances. But you can definitely conclude that same as Gojo did, which is fighting through the domain and actually heavily damaging Sukuna, Garou would be able to do the same, if not even worse. Remember that Garou at this point does have access to a sort of regeneration, wounds just disappear and doesn't exist anymore. So even if Cleave and Dismantle does damage him, with his his regen and superior speed, he'd either tag Sukuna or just leave the domain space. Some would say that Sukuna can use regeneration, so he can't afford to get hit by Garou. But remember that Garou has access to the Whirlwind Iron Cutting Fist, something that can dismantle a body in multiple pieces and it'd be very hard to regenerate from. Kinda gives Sukuna a taste of his medicine. But what if we involve Mahoraga in this equation? Would it be any different? You see, Garou and Mahoraga are often compared to each other for their ability to adapt, and while they both have reactive evolution, their application heavily differs. Mahoraga does try to find ways to overcome hacks, abilities, or techniques, but he doesn't really get physically stronger as Gojo was always overwhelming him in that aspect. Garou on the other hand can get drastically stronger in a faster rate, gain resistance to whatever mid-combat, and copy whatever technique he can see. The point is, Garou would be able to throw hands with both Sukuna and Mahoraga worse than how Gojo did it, and I simply don't think that Mahoraga would be that beneficial against a significantly physically superior character. Now what about Fuga, the flame arrow? Would it be effective? Absolutely not. This in my opinion would be a huge waste of curse energy as Garou already has resistance to temperature, blast or firepower attacks on levels way higher than what Sukuna can dash out. And remember that this attack has a shape of an arrow, and we've literally seen that the Water Stream Rock Smashing Fist can redirect such things. So if he sees it, he can redirect it. If he doesn't, he can simply tank it. The only win condition I can think of to completely dismantle Garou would certainly be the World Cutting Slash. If we assume that this negates durability and cannot be sensed in a conventional way, if Garou doesn't blitz him immediately, which is something embedded in his character by the way, Sukuna can sneak that attack and claim victory. Pay in mind that this is with considering that Garou just doesn't sense a slight change in the air like Maki does and stays static on a place and doesn't move, as Garou later becomes super conscious of his surroundings to the point that he can't even fight while asleep. But that's actually a very valid win condition. If Garou is occupied with Shikigamis and domain slashes, Sukuna can take that opportunity to sneak him with the World Cutting Slash. If he gets split in two like it happened with Gojo, I can't cope and say that Garou would be able to regenerate from that. Never indicated, never implied, and never shown. So at the end of the day, the way Sukuna would be able to win is if we assume that Garou can sense that attack and doesn't blitz him in the first place. But without this factor, Sukuna definitely shouldn't be on the same conversation as this version of Garou. You can argue human Garou for sure, but half monster red-haired Garou absolutely not.